Many people say, oh, if you give everyone a basic income, they'll be lazy, right? They'll do nothing, sit on the couch, watch Netflix all day, use drugs, alcohol, whatever. Doesn't work. Um, what I've tried to do in my book is to just look at all the experiments, scientific experiments, like real stories about real people where they actually tried this and found out that it does work. It does actually work. So, for example, in Canada in 1974, they did an experiment that lasted for 4 years, and it was pretty much forgotten because there was no money left after those 4 years to analyze the results. But then, what happened just a couple of years ago is that a professor found the records, did the analysis, and discovered that it was a huge success. You know,
Okay.
healthcare costs went down, crime went down, kids performed much better in school, domestic violence incidents were down, and no, people were not massively lazy or anything.
So would you say it also wouldn't matter on the economic growth?
I believe that we can't afford not to introduce a basic income, basically. In the first place, because it would completely eradicate poverty, and we know from mountains of economic evidence that poverty is really expensive, right? With more poverty, you've also got more healthcare costs, you've got more crime, you've got kids doing less while in school. It's a huge waste. Eradicating poverty, in contrast, is an investment that pays for itself. If you just add up the numbers, it does make sense. If you look at a country like the US, for example, very rich country with one of the highest rates of poverty in the rich world, economists have calculated that a basic income would be about $350 billion, while just the cost of child poverty is $500 billion. It means that eradicating poverty is cheaper than combating the symptoms of poverty. Right? It's just good business thinking this. It's not some left-wing, bizarre, unaffordable idea.
But this is only for the US, right? So
Oh, it's
like
cheaper in Germany because you've got less poverty here. So it's
yeah, but I mean somewhere in Southern America or Africa, there it couldn't work, could it?
well, actually, the idea of a basic income may be even more promising for developing countries. And the reason is very simple. If you look at a country like India, for example, India has got hundreds of anti-poverty policies, but there's quite a bit of corruption there. So the actual amount of help that really reaches the people who need it is often little. Now, what if you can just directly give the cash to the people who really need it? We can do that with modern technology. You know, you can just hand out SIM cards to people, for example. There are some NGOs doing that. You can put a bit of mobile phone money in those SIM cards, and there's no problem with corruption anymore. Again, there are scientific researchers doing this sort of thing right now and discovering that it works really, really well. So, in that sense, it may be even more promising, the idea of free money or a basic income for poorer countries.
You are sometimes citing a research of farmers who get 60% of their money at one point in the
Yeah.
year. And there has been a research that their IQ is actually higher when they got the money, like when they are rich,
Yeah.
than before.
Yeah.
What does this tells us? Like,
Well, here's another thing where we need to change our mind. We should rethink what poverty is. So often people, both on the right and on the left, think that there's something wrong with the poor themselves, right? So the right says, well, the poor are just lazy. You know, they need to learn some responsibility and we'll teach them. And then the left says, no, 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 don't be so harsh. We'll help them. We'll help them to make better decisions. But the main idea behind that is the same. There's something wrong with them, right? Where researchers have found out is just living in the context of poverty worsens your cognitive ability. So in this research, what they did is they looked at sugarcane farmers in India, and these farmers received about 60% of their annual income all at once. So they were poor before the harvest, rich after. Well, they gave them an IQ test before and after, and the difference was 13 to 14 points. That's huge, you know. That's comparable to the effects of alcoholism or having lost a night's sleep. You know, it's a very big effect, and that just shows you that we need to rethink what poverty is. We don't solve poverty with helping the poor with courses or whatever, or trying to make them more financial literate or whatever, because it's not a lack of knowledge. Poverty is just a lack of cash. It's not rocket science. It's very easy. Now, how do you solve a lack of cash? Let's think. Well, maybe you just give cash, but maybe that's just it.
So you call it utopia for realists, but at the first time we hear of these ideas, they kind of seem unrealistic to us.
Yeah.
Why is this so?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to remember that every milestone of civilization, the end of slavery, democracy, or equal rights for men and women, they were all utopian fantasies once. They were all crazy ones, ridiculous. And the first people who said, in the 17th or the 18th century, yeah, let's do something called democracy, they were probably laughed at. It's probably, I don't know, that's a crazy idea. So progress is about crazy ideas. We need to come up with more of these utopian ideas. Now, I know that Germans and I'm from Holland. The Dutch, they don't really like those ideas. They often say, "Oh, that's too expensive. Who's going to pay for that?"
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that progress in the end is all about those crazy ideas. And yeah, basic income, completely eradicating poverty is one of those ideas.